Hello, everybody. Welcome to a joint webinar on AP foreign VAT invoices, stop paying incorrectly charged VAT on foreign AP invoices and how to manage it effectively through the invoice solution developed and presented by SAP Concur. My name is Joe Healy, and I'm Director of Strategic Partnerships here at Taxback International. And for the past decade, I've worked very closely with SAP Concur to identify opportunities to add value to our mutual customers in the area of VAT reclaim. Today, I'm joined by Imran Gohar, Principal Solutions Consultant at SAP Concur. And Imran is going to talk to you about the fabulous invoice solution that SAP Concur have developed, which automates and streamlines your AP process. I will then focus at the very end on how we integrate with SAP Concur Invoice to add value around VAT reclaim and VAT compliance of your AP transactions. So as I said, we've taken care of the introductions. We're going to do an overview of SAP Concur. We're going to talk about how AP Invoice works. We're then going to focus in on the integration between Taxback International and SAP Concur and how we can add even more value through guaranteeing invoice compliance and VAT and maximizing VAT recovery. We'll leave some time at the very end then for questions and answers. So looking forward to jumping straight into it now with Imran.
Right, so thank you very much for that, Joe. So as Joe mentioned, so my name is Imran Gohar. I'm a Principal Solution Consultant at SAP Concur. And I think what we try to endeavor on the Concur side is to help organizations manage all of the different spend that's happening with regards to their employees. So let's kick off with a brief introduction to SAP Concur. So SAP Concur is an employee spend management platform that allows organizations to capture the spend whenever and wherever it happens. And what we mean by that is that your spend could be happening when your employees are traveling. So they might be booking flights with BritishAirways.com, for example, or they might be booking hotels and other travel-related bookings with their travel management companies. And what Concur allows us to do, or what allows organizations to do, is to import and bring all of that information related to that users or employees' travel into the Concur system, where it can be analyzed. It gives the travel manager visibility into how the travelers are traveling, what they're booking, etc. In addition to that, once people travel, the system allows them to capture all of their receipts, which basically allows them to then submit expense claims and get reimbursed. Or in case of employee spending on a company credit card, then the system allows the organization to reconcile all of that travel card related information with the incurred expenses. And then thirdly, the system also allows an organization to capture all of the vendor-related spend that's happening within the business. And this could be spend that's happening where people are going and purchasing items, goods and services from external vendors, and then invoices are coming in, which are then captured, they are processed, and then the organization can gain visibility into all of that spend centrally. So in essence, the Concur employee spend management platform allows you, or allows an organization to basically achieve three things. First, visibility on all of the employee-related spend across the different spend avenues. For example, expense, travel, invoice. It allows them to exercise control and enforce your compliance policy on all of the spend that's happening. And thirdly, the system also has a big ecosystem of partners that allows us to provide additional value-added services on top of the functionality that the system brings. And what I mean by that is that if you look at the different partners within the Concur ecosystem, we can actually interface with those partners. We can pass in data to those partners in real time, and therefore we can sort of provide additional value-added services. A good example of that could be we can integrate directly, for example, with BritishAirways.com. So any employee that's going and booking travel on the BritishAirways.com website, we can immediately get visibility into the itinerary of that employee, where they're traveling, what the destination is, how long they would be staying there. So from a duty of care and from a risk assessment perspective, the travel manager is fully aware of where the employees are, because all of that itinerary data is flowing directly from BritishAirways.com into Concur. Similarly, when it comes to expense and invoice, if an organization wants to understand their VAT liability, or if they want to understand how much VAT they can reclaim, we can pass the data, both invoice and expense data, to Taxback International, for example, and they can analyze all of that information and then provide an analysis of which purchase categories an organization can reclaim VAT on and which ones they cannot. And lastly, I think we can integrate with different ERP systems, accounting systems, and external procurement systems so that we can manage all of the spend in one place. So basically, if you are raising purchase orders externally, we can pull those purchase order data into Concur, we can do matching, etc., with that information. So the real power of Concur lies within our ecosystem and our ability to seamlessly integrate with all of these different partner companies, which basically provide value and additional services to our customers. Now, for the purposes of this webinar, we'll focus on the Concur Invoice module, or the invoice component of the solution. So from a Concur Invoice perspective, the Concur solution, first of all, allows accounts payable to understand how much spend is going through the system from an accounts payable or from a vendor invoicing perspective. This Concur system allows you to turn piles of papers into a digitized form. It allows you to manage all of that incoming paper in one place. The system allows you to also grow your business without having to grow your staff. And what that basically means is that organizations who are growing, they don't need to hire more people, because the system will automatically automate a lot of the processes and therefore reduce the need to have more heads within AP to manage the invoices that are flowing through Concur. Now, when we look at Concur Invoice, the solution itself covers the complete life cycle of an invoice process. And what we mean by that is, first of all, it allows you to raise purchase requests within Concur. So an employee can order goods and services through the Concur's purchase request module. This request can be approved by a manager and then workflowed to the vendor for ordering. And the system has the ability to then receive invoices from the vendor, and the invoices can be coming in as paper documents or as email PDF attachments. The Concur's integrated optical character recognition technology allows us to automatically extract both the invoice header and line level data from those incoming invoices. And once all of that information is verified, the invoices can either be sent for matching purposes. So if it's a purchase order invoice, we will match that purchase order invoice against a purchase order and a good receipt. And if it's a non-purchase order invoice, then we can workflow that non-purchase order invoice for approval to a manager or a number of managers as part of the authorization process. And once the invoices are fully approved, they can be posted for payment. And then we've got options around automating the payment process and then outputting reports that could basically give an organization visibility into what was ordered, what was spent, and with whom that spend occurred with from a vendor perspective. Now, the three core benefits of the Concur system is, number one is we can integrate into any external procurement system. So we've got interfaces which are pretty agnostic when it comes to interfacing with external systems. So we can pull data from different ERP systems, accounting systems, and also procurement systems. We can link with with external solutions to pass data to them for further analysis. The Concur system provides a very powerful mobile experience from a manager perspective. So if I'm a manager that's traveling a lot, I can not only approve all of my invoices and purchase requests within that mobile device, I can also approve my expense claims. I can also approve travel requests from that single interface without having to log into my laptop and having to be sitting in front of a computer. So I can actually approve everything centrally on the go. Then the system provides a very powerful AP engine, which basically allows accounts payable teams to not only manage all of the expenses, but as well as all of the vendor invoice data in one place, which significantly reduces the amount of effort AP has to go through with managing all of the paper documents, with answering queries regarding invoices from vendors, and then also making sure that all of the expense claims and invoices are compliant with the company's internal policies. And last, and I think this is the most important piece, is the Concur system provides in-depth reports that can basically give an organization actionable insights into how the business is spending money, where the money is being spent, what purchase categories are important to that organization, and then how the company sees itself from a cash flow and accruals perspective. So the system is able to provide all of those key performance indicators that an organization needs to run efficiently and to ensure that they are within their compliance strategy. So let's go through a workflow process of how all of this works. And then I'll also go into the system, and I've got some screenshots to actually show you how all of the different elements within the Concur invoice solution look. So from a workflow perspective, so first of all, we receive all documents in the Concur system centrally. So irrespective of whether it's a paper document that is being scanned to a PDF or other formats, an organization will be able to upload all of those documents. If invoices are being received as email PDFs, we can import them directly into the Concur system, or we can receive them directly into the system. We issue you unique email addresses that you just simply forward those emails to, and they will end up in Concur. And then we also got interfaces to receive invoices that are coming in via the e-invoicing process. Now, once all of these invoices are received centrally, they are processed by the system, by the data capture module, and therefore the data is extracted from those digital images. And once it's extracted, the information is verified before the invoices are released into the system for processing. Now, the system can automatically route invoices to a centralized queue for accounts payable to pick those invoices up, or it can route them directly to the invoice owners, where these invoices. So once these invoices are routed to the respective users, the invoices can be coded, they can be matched to purchase orders and good receipts. Any exceptions can be resolved by the end users. And then these invoices can go through the workflow process where a manager can approve those invoices, or a number of managers can approve those invoices before they go to AP for a final accounting review. Now, in the accounting review step, it's just the final due diligence step, which basically allows AP to make sure that every information on that invoice has been accounted for, there isn't anything missing, and if there are any exceptions triggering this, they can resolve those before that invoice is posted into the ERP system for payment. But at the same time, that information and the invoice images can also be passed to Taxback International, for example, for VAT reclaim analysis purposes. So this whole process of of managing the invoices not only automates the coding, the workflow, the matching aspects, but it also is very seamless because all this data is flowing through the system with very few touches by individual users or managers. And therefore, from an experience perspective, it will feel as if you've got full visibility of every invoice at any stage of the workflow process. Now let's have a look at how this looks within the system itself. So this is the dashboard screen. So once a user logs into Concur, they will come to this dashboard screen where basically they will have access to all of the different modules that have been activated for that specific user. They'll be able to see all of their different documents that they need to be processing. So in this case, this lady Donna, she is AP Finance, who has 3 purchase requests that she needs to process. She's got 7 invoices that she needs to look at. There are 3 expenses sitting in her queue for her to account for, and then there's 1 open expense report that she needs to look at. So it's a one-stop shop for the end user to be able to access all of the different modules and then process the different documents accordingly. From an AP manager perspective or AP perspective, they have their own dashboard screen, so which is this invoice manager dashboard. So this is where AP can have full visibility of every invoice that's being processed within Concur. And what I mean by that is that AP can immediately see where all the invoices are in the workflow process, if there are any alerts or exceptions triggering. So the system will alert them that if these certain invoices are sitting within a particular user's queue for very long, they will be AP will be alerted, and they can then instigate any actions to address that issue. But on top of that, it's a single place where all of the AP people, so you might have 5 or 6 AP people working within the AP team, they have a unified view of all of the invoices at any one point in time as a result of this. Now, from a capture perspective, as I mentioned, all invoices and related documents can be received centrally within Concur in a centralized repository. So if you're an organization that operates globally and you have different offices and you receive invoices in different office locations and they are in different languages, etc., you can centralize all of your accounts payable as your invoice you can centralize all of your invoice related data in one place within Concur and receive all of those invoices in a centralized repository. So if you already have a shared service center, then irrespective of whether the invoices were received locally or internationally, you will have full visibility of those invoices. You'll be able to see who uploaded those scanned documents or which vendor or AP teams emailed invoices into the system in one place. So this is also where you will be able to see what data has been extracted from an invoice. So once invoices have been received and they go through our OCR technology, the OCR engine will automatically extract both header and line level data from that invoice, and it will populate the invoice forms accordingly. So in this case, you can see that the system has automatically extracted invoice number, invoice date, your VAT information, your total amount information, etc., from this particular invoice. And it's done the same thing at the line level where it's extracted the description, unit price, quantity information from that invoice and automatically populated the invoice form. So this significantly reduces the manual entry tasks for accounts payable. And at the same time, it ensures that the data is accurately captured and then it's accurately verified by AP before it goes through the different functions of matching or approval. Now, from a manager perspective, if I'm traveling, I have full visibility of all of the invoices on my mobile device. So this is an example where this manager can immediately see what the spend is, what the total amount is. They can even see the image of the invoice on their mobile device, and they can make a decision whether that invoice should be approved, or if they have reservations regarding anything, they can reject that invoice at a click of a button, basically. Now, this is the last stage in that workflow process, which is that once all invoices have been fully approved, they're fully matched, they end up in this ready for processing queue, which is where accounts payable has the final say on when these invoices get posted to the ERP system. At the same time, once all of these invoices are approved by AP for posting, then the system also passes this information to our partners. If the links between the solutions are activated. So in this case, once AP has made sure that the data on the invoice was fully captured, it's fully approved, there isn't any exceptions triggering, all they do is select the invoices and they can post it for payment. But that does not mean that this process has to be a manual task. This can be automated. So if you do not need AP to do any due diligence before anything gets posted for payment, then this process can be automated and the system will automatically post invoices once they have been fully approved. So with that, I'll hand it back to Joe, and Joe will take us through what happens on the Taxback International side, which is where invoice data will be analyzed and then the VAT reclaim analysis will be determined. Back to you, Joe.
Okay, thank you very much. The complete life cycle of the AP invoice from a AP processing standpoint has been completed. However, there's still one more step. VAT on AP invoices can represent up to 25% of the costs of projects abroad. So, you know, when you look at AP invoices, you're typically talking about a lower volume of transactions to, we'll say, something like travel expenses, which we also work with SAP Concur on and Concur expense. However, the value of these transactions is much, much higher. We're seeing at Taxback International a lot of VAT, foreign VAT, applying to tooling costs, to leasing and rental, trade shows. So, you know, there is still a lot of foreign VAT out there. Now, it's important to also mention that the treatment of VAT on AP invoices very much centers around place of supply rules. Now, without getting into the weeds too much on this, what I can say, just let me give you a quick high-level overview as to why we see foreign VAT charged when the reverse charge mechanism still exists. So the reverse charge mechanism, this is a mechanism set up within the European Union in 2010, which allows companies to zero rate their invoices for VAT if they're supplying, if the place of supply is outside of their home country, the country that the vendor is registered in. Now, the rules for zero rating of dispatched goods or services is pretty much based on the fact that the customer must be registered for value-added tax in another member state. The seller obtains and retains the customer's VAT registration number, including the country prefix. The seller quotes their VAT number in their customer's VAT number on the sales invoice, and the goods are dispatched or transported to another member state. So if any of the above conditions are met that I've just mentioned, VAT from these supplies should be zero rated, and Taxback International does not have any VAT to reclaim. However, what we see quite frequently is up to 60% of AP invoices have VAT charged incorrectly. So this is where the conditions that I've just described have not been met, or potentially they have been met and just not followed by the vendor, and the vendor has defaulted to charging VAT on their supply of goods or services, and our mutual customers are paying this VAT incorrectly. So it's very important to be aware of that. And the reason that vendors are charging VAT incorrectly is that, you know, they're not VAT specialists a lot of the time. AR departments are prone to error. You know, the reverse charge mechanism is based on place of supply rules, and the place of supply rules can be sometimes misunderstood by the vendor. So, when we look at goods not dispatched or transported by the vendor, the place of supply is where the goods are at the time of supply. But if we look at goods that are involving installation or assembly done by the supplier, the place of supply is where the goods are installed or assembled. And then finally, if we look at goods that are dispatched and or transported, then the place of supply is where the transport begins. So, we have to very much look at the complexity of this and say, right, we can see why errors are made. But then that just goes to show you how important it is for companies like Taxback International to be able to integrate with an invoice solution like SAP Concur Invoice, to be able to provide that level of comfort to know where you are being charged VAT, you're being charged correctly, and if so, is that VAT actually recoverable? So again, what we aim to do on our side of this process is to be able to, just like Concur Invoice, give you that visibility and give you that automation and give you that confidence that everything is being managed effectively. So when it comes to incorrectly charged VAT, we go back to the supplier, but where the VAT is correctly charged, then we utilize the various foreign VAT reclaim mechanisms. So this is on cross-border VAT transactions where the VAT has been correctly charged. We must adhere to the rules, the deadlines, the filing requirements of the various tax offices. And as you know, these change continuously. We must make sure that the invoice that we're dealing with is compliant for the purpose of VAT recovery. And then we submit the claims to the authorities, and we work very closely with the authorities to manage the claim on behalf of our customer to ensure a successful outcome. Because, again, going back to my earlier point, when it comes to invoice and when it comes to foreign VAT charged on invoice, one error can lead to tens, if not hundreds of thousands of euro in VAT being lost, VAT reclaim being lost. So that's how important this is. Without an effective invoice solution, without an effective integration like we have, Taxback International has with SAP Concur, sometimes, and we've seen this a lot, the foreign VAT invoices get lost and deadlines get passed and the VAT is not reclaimed. And this is a huge cost to business. So being able to manage foreign VAT recovery on correctly charged VAT by the supplier cross-border is key, and utilizing the foreign VAT recovery mechanisms, 8th and 13th directives, to ensure that the cost of doing business overseas is minimized. Then, of course, as I mentioned, I set out at the beginning of my section here the complexity around place of supply, the reverse charge mechanism, and you can see that unless you have a VAT specialist working in a particular department that's responsible for invoicing on the supplier side, then mistakes are going to be made. So one of the key drivers for Taxback International and in our integration with SAP Concur Invoice is to help our clients stop paying incorrectly charged VAT. So, and to ensure that domestic VAT is charged correctly, of course, is another very, very important point, because again, errors will be made across the board. And as a VAT specialist organization, we have ways of reviewing all AP transactions and ensuring that everything has been managed efficiently and correctly. But one of the quickest and easiest ways to do that is through our integration with SAP Concur Invoice. We have, as Imran pointed out in his slides, we have the ability to pull the transactions at the very end of the life cycle on the SAP Concur Invoice side directly into our environment. So we get the data, we get the images, we get to screen the invoice, we get to ensure determine was the VAT correctly charged. If the answer is yes, Then we manage the recovery. If the answer is no, we go back to the vendor and we work with the vendor to get them to repay the incorrectly charged VAT and redress the error that they made. Of course, it's also a great tool for future planning, in that we can now, if there are future supplies of goods or services from the same vendor, we can educate that vendor, and they no longer incorrectly treat, they can no longer charge VAT incorrectly. We make sure that they use the correct VAT treatment going forward. So it's very much a continuous improvement process as well. So the fact that we integrate with Concur, that allows you you have access to a VAT specialist company, which means if you don't have an in-house VAT specialist, you can leverage our capability. So the fact that we have consultants and we have expertise going back 20 years in every single country where there is a VAT mechanism allows us to be an extension of your finance function, of your accounts payable function. We are the ones that are going to give you the comfort and confidence to know that the VAT treatment from your suppliers is accurate. We're going to check all the invoices to identify correctly and incorrectly charged VAT to ensure that there is, not a problem with cash flow, because if you're paying incorrectly charged VAT and you're not identifying it very quickly, then you're going into the foreign VAT recovery mechanism. You're looking for rulings from tax offices. It makes it a lot more difficult to go back to your vendor and get them to reissue an invoice. If you're dealing with SAP Concur Invoice and Taxback International, we're picking up on the error in close to real time. So we have the ability to very quickly go back to the vendor and get them to redress the error that they made. And of course, this is a massive impact on cash flow optimization. So in short, the connection that we have with Concur Invoice is called VAT Connect Invoice. It's one click to get started. We seamlessly integrate into the back end of the Concur lifecycle. We're giving, like Concur Invoice, give you visibility and automation on the invoice side and provide you with the complete lifecycle. We do the exact same thing on the VAT reclaim side. We're giving you visibility. We're automating that process for you. We provide you with the complete life cycle for VAT and VAT recovery, whether that be correctly charged VAT and recovering directly from the tax offices by submitting applications, or working directly with your suppliers on incorrectly charged VAT is all encompassing. And as I mentioned, there is a planning element to it as well, where we can very much manage this process going forward. So Taxback International, we're automatically connecting, analyzing all AP invoices, data from clients' expense management systems, payments and ERP systems, corporate cards, P cards, hotels, travel management companies, to provide the complete AP invoice solution. So what we're saying here is your business is going to be paying VAT right across the board, from expense to invoice, and we have all of that covered in our integration with SAP Concur. Invoice, of course, it's going to be lower volume, but it's going to be higher value. So any error that's made on the invoice side is going to have serious repercussions for business. Just one case in point, recently we had a situation where we identified two transactions of a customer on the continent, a UK-based customer acquiring goods and services on the continent, and one had a VAT charge of 250,000 euros. The other had a VAT charge of 120,000 euros. So on two invoices, we had, hundreds of thousands of VAT charged. And on those two invoices, the VAT was actually charged incorrectly. We identified this very quickly. We worked very closely with the vendors to make sure that they understood why the VAT was charged incorrectly, and we successfully had a VAT back from the vendor case for our supplier. Now, if Taxback International was not involved in this process, you can imagine the amount of time that this money would not have been in our client's balance sheet. Also, who would know whether it would have even been identified in the first place? And it would just be seen as a cost to doing business. So the upside on what we're talking about here with our integration with SAP Concur Invoice is phenomenal. That cannot be taken lightly. You want to make sure you're compliant, and you want to make sure that you're minimizing the amount of VAT that you're paying. And Taxback does that, both of those. Taxback International does both of those for you through our integration with Concur Invoice. Through our VAT Connect analytics tool, then, we're providing you with full control so that you can see exactly where your VAT potential is, what's awaiting audit, what's compliant, what's correctable, what's VAT back from the supplier. So as I mentioned, the Taxback process happens at the very back end of the Concur Invoice lifecycle. It's seamlessly integrated. We're doing the analysis. We're identifying where foreign VAT is being charged. We're determining, was it incorrectly charged? If the answer there is yes, we're going directly back to the suppliers to retrieve the incorrectly charged VAT. If it is correctly charged, then in that instance, we're using the foreign VAT reclaim mechanisms, and we're submitting claims to the various member states of refund globally, and we're ensuring a successful outcome of those claims with those tax authorities. And we're managing everything seamlessly and providing you with all of the visibility that you're going to need. So again, just like Concur Invoice, it's a completely automated solution. So I think you can see clearly through our process, coupled with the SAP Concur Invoice process, how we absolutely manage the complete life cycle of an invoice, from processing right through to VAT reclaim. Now I'm going to hand back to Imran, who's going to sum up on his side.
So thank you very much, Joe, for that. So I think the crux of the discussion here is that the Concur, SAP Concur and Taxback International solutions combined can basically provide an organization with a unified view of their finance, tax, and the travel expense data when it comes to the invoicing side as well as from the tax side. It allows you to expand your digital transformation by shining light on all of your spend through our dashboards and also through the reporting capabilities within both the solutions. And then it allows you to accelerate your organization's performance by introducing an efficient AP engine, which basically streamlines your accounts payable process, both from an invoice and expense perspective. At the same time, from a VAT reclaim perspective, it gives you that seamless view of all of those purchase categories where you can reclaim VAT and where you can leverage the functionality within Taxback International solution to get an understanding of what is reclaimable and what is not. So I think that is the sum of the element as we see it from a Concur and Taxback International perspective.
Fantastic, Imran. Thank you very much for that. So the value adds are improved cash flow, better visibility, supplier education, identifying incorrectly charged VAT, so saving a lot of cost to the business, safeguarding your reputation with the tax office by guaranteeing compliance, and seamlessly managing the VAT back from the suppliers and educating your suppliers. So, that cannot be understated or overestimated. So thank you very much for your time, folks. We have carved out some time here at the end to respond to some questions that we have picked up throughout this webinar. And I'll just jump straight in with this one. Imran, this one is around implementation. So it's actually for both of us. So I'll let you start off and talk about what's your typical implementation time for Concur Invoice.
So the typical implementation time for Concur Invoice is 12 to 16 weeks. It can be quicker, but I think it depends on the different implementation cycles that an organization wants to implement. So for example, they could have a couple of weeks of UAT testing or user acceptance testing. So but I think our recommended timescales are 12 to 16 weeks from end to end. So that is from the point We configure the system, all the interfaces and everything, and to the point where the system is starting to post invoices into the backend system. So that's
Very
the
good.
time scales.
Very good, excellent. And from a Taxback International perspective, our implementation time is a lot less. The beauty of this entire collaboration between SAP Concur and Taxback International is we have an application that sits in the SAP Concur App Center. It's called VAT Connect Invoice, and it can be implemented in one click. And that sounds like a very bold promise, but it's very, very accurate, and we have lots of customers will attest to that. Once you've configured Concur Invoice with SAP Concur, we are the VAT engine sitting at the back end, and we're completely integrated. So when you've implemented your Concur Invoice, you've effectively implemented Taxback International as well. And all you need to do is click Connect on our app, VAT Connect Invoice, and we are fully functional, up and running. We'll then have one implementation call with you to get supporting documents and to introduce you to your key account manager and to get access to our analytics platform, VAT Connect. So it really is that straightforward, and that again is one of the benefits of the collaboration between SAP Concur and Taxback International. So there's a couple of more here. How does the entire invoice processing and VAT reclaim, and how long does the invoice processing and VAT reclaim analysis take? So Imran, do you want to take just the first part of that, invoice processing? If we take one AP transaction from beginning to end in Concur Invoice, how long is that going to take?
It's relative to the process within an organization, and I think it would change from organization from an organization. The reason I say that is that some organizations have, let's say, 5 days approval workflow, others have maybe 10 days that they give their managers to approve invoices. So I think typically what we like to say is that if you look at the benchmark figure, so today typically it takes an organization 10 to 15 days to approve a single invoice transaction. Now, if you introduce a invoice management system like Concur Invoice, then that can come down to a couple of days or to even or 5 days max. So from the point you receive an invoice to the point it gets posted into the ERP system can be significantly reduced as a result of Concur Invoice.
Excellent. And from Taxback International standpoint, it's pretty much real time. So once the life cycle of the invoice is complete in SAP Concur Invoice, Taxback International takes over, and our analysis can be delivered within a matter of seconds. So we schedule audit timelines with our customers. We understand what are their, typically we can submit quarterly for foreign VAT reclaim, but we're doing analysis in very close to real time to pick up and identify incorrectly charged VAT. Correctly charged VAT will be submitted quarterly. Incorrectly charged VAT will be done in pretty much real time to get back to the supplier as quickly as possible and to say, to inform you, the customer, that the VAT was charged incorrectly and that we're going back to the supplier, and to let the supplier know in as close to real time as possible that they've made an error and they must make amends. So on our side, it's pretty much instantaneous once the life cycle of the invoice in Concur Invoice is complete. So then that leads me into our final question here, which is how do you manage AP VAT reclaim in conjunction with T&E VAT reclaim? That's a really good question, because AP and T&E, the reclaim process for foreign VAT charges is very similar. We must utilize, for example, within the European Union, we must utilize the electronic portals, and we must submit our claims once audited and eligible and compliant transactions have been identified. We must upload them into the electronic portals. For example, in the United Kingdom, it's through the HMRC portal, where the claims are then distributed around to the rest of the EU member states. And then we work directly with those member states to ensure a successful outcome for our client. So AP invoices and travel expense invoices, typically we look to do all of those together, because you're entitled to 5 submissions per annum in most states. Therefore, we must monitor and ensure that we don't use all of those up and ultimately end up with additional transactions at the end of the year which need foreign VAT recovery, yet we don't have enough claims left over. Therefore, we must manage that process incredibly carefully and be very vigilant to ensure that we reserve the opportunity to apply and submit a claim at the back end of the year to capture all the spend. So to that end, what we're doing is we're submitting quarterly claims, and then we reserve 1 claim for the end of the year to capture any transactions where foreign VAT has not been charged. Now, when it comes to Concur invoice and expense customers, that process is incredibly straightforward and automatically managed, because all of the VAT, that correctly charged VAT that we have identified throughout the year, will be submitted quarterly. The beauty of the SAP Concur invoice and expense solution and the collaboration with Taxback International is nothing gets missed. Everything gets captured through our integration, and everything gets audited. Claims get prepared and claims get submitted on a quarterly basis. So, you know, that again, there's a lot of comfort to be taken from that. So that is our session for today. I hope you've taken a lot from it. We will be back at a later stage to talk to you in a little bit more detail about how our sister company TransferMate and Taxback International have developed Payments Hub, which will again add another string to the Concur invoice bow by adding a payment solution to the back end of Concur invoice. And again, you know, automating, creating more visibility being the key words, managing the full life cycle. We'll be back at a future date to talk to you about the payment solution integrated with Concur invoice and Taxback International VAT reclaim. Thank you very much for your time. On behalf of myself and Imran, I thank you for your attendance today, and hope to hear from you if you have any questions in the future. We will certainly be circulating this session, and we look forward to having further conversations and to working with you to manage your invoice in the future. All the very best.